Hi there, my name is Dr. Chris Payne and I'm a senior lecturer in games design at the University of Staffordshire. And this is...
I'm Mike Woods. I'm also a senior lecturer, but under the banner of game art.
Perfect, it's all good. And welcome to Developer Mode. Cool. So what we're going to do today then, Mike, is we're going to look at the workflow of creating footsteps in Unreal. That's what we're going to look at. So we've all got footsteps. Even you have footsteps, and so do I. That's how that works.
I'm super sneaky though.
That's cool. That's what we like. That's what we like, right? So, because footsteps is something that we have in real life, they're obviously really important in games, you know, that kind of thing. And because I come from like a game audio background, I thought it'd be good to just go over some of these concepts. So, if we look at audio in itself in games, it's what I love about games. It's such an amazing kind of medium. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I've come from kind of a music background, so I'm used to dealing with like linear audio where you've got like a start, a middle, and an end, if that makes sense. So it's quite a linear process. But in games, we can basically create non-linear audio as well. So you've basically got audio that can react to the character or react to us as players, if that makes sense, right? So we can look at audio in a much more like a dynamic process in a game. And when we look at dynamic audio, we have two types of dynamic audio. We have adaptive audio and interactive audio. So interactive audio is basically where the player or the player character kind of interact with the world. So that can be like pressing a button on like a menu, that kind of thing. Or it can be, you know, hitting a collectible to collect something, which is quite cool. And you can also have adaptive audio, which more kind of adapts to the game state, if that makes sense. So like music. So if you go into like a boss area, that music can change, if that makes sense. So is that all kind of making sense?
It's all about breaking down the things that you need. So you're talking about a linear audio experience. It's just actually you've got to think about the entire scope of it and break it into the individual elements so that at any point you can pull in whatever the audio that you need.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool. And footsteps is definitely part of that process that we're gonna look at today. With that, with doing this process, you've also got something called middleware software that we can use with this. So if you're a musician, you can basically use things like what's called a digital audio workstation. And you can use software like Cubase or Fruity Loops to make music. Have you used anything like that before? Or?
It's just a basic drum sound stuff.
Yeah, that's cool, right? So musicians are used to that world, if that makes sense, and audio people are. And then you've got the other side of it, which is like the game engine, which is what we're used to. And in the middle of that, you've got the middleware. And two of the biggest products for that are kind of Wise and FMOD. And I want to show FMOD today, which is kind of that middle ground between like Cubase or Fruity Loops, or Logic Pro X on a Mac. It's the middle ground between that and the actual game engine. And it's cool because it means that you have in middleware, we've got this middleware on the screen at the minute. You know, you have features that a musician or an audio person would be used to. So you have like a mixer and you've got faders and channels and buttons and all that kind of stuff, which is quite cool. So you're not looking at code in that respect. So it opens the world up a bit more to musicians and audio people, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I suppose it's like giving an artist a paintbrush that they're really quite used to. That kind of analogy.
That is a good analogy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll give it a go. So basically, then what I'm going to do is, when you're using middleware, you have to kind of prepare the project in the middleware package itself, like FMOD. So we're going to prepare the footsteps in FMOD. And then we're going to push it into Unreal Engine and do some prep in Unreal Engine and so on.
What work are you actually going to do to these footsteps?
So I've got the footsteps already as samples. So FMOD just works really with audio files. That's it. That's all it works with. And it's kind of like a fancy digital audio workstation for kind of a game engine environment. So I've got the samples. The samples are here. Let me have a look. So these are my footstep samples. I've actually downloaded them, and they're basically from this source. They're pretty cool audio samples from this source here. And I'm going to take these, and we've got 4 concrete sounds. So we're going to do 2 types of footsteps, footsteps for concrete and footsteps for grass. So I'm going to grab these concrete sounds, and we've got what's called the assets tab. And what we can do here is, we can create a folder, call it footsteps. Yeah. And I like to, make a few subfolders. We can do that if we want, concrete, like that. And then we'll make another one for grass. Then we'll put these in like that. And then the first stage is obviously just to get these footstep sounds. We normally have about 4 sounds per kind of like physical surface type, if that makes sense. I'm just going to get these.
So it's actually so you can randomize them later.
Correct. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I'm going to get these and plonk them in here. And then I'm going to get these grass ones and plonk them in the grass folder, which is cool. So that is our assets put in there, which is all good. So the next thing we need to do in FMOD is basically, we've got something called events. I'll talk about events first. So an event, I've got a random new event in here, is basically something we trigger in the game engine. Okay, so it's literally something that fires. And what FMOD does is it takes these events, and you can attach to these events audio files, but also how they're played. And you can also attach to them lots of different effects like reverb, chorus, phaser. Do you see what I mean? All those different types of audio effects you can attach to an event. You can also attach lots of different mixer settings. So where you set all the dials and faders in your mixer session, all of that can be attached to an event, which is cool. And we'll do a little bit of that today, not too much, because obviously we haven't got loads of time.
So is this just going to be fun times in messing around with this stuff, or is this going to be exported, something you change and export into a games engine, or is it going to be just replicating what happens in a games engine?
It's a very good question. So basically, this event will kind of be built in FMOD and exported through over to Unreal. And I've set that up in the Unreal project already to listen to this FMOD project.
Okay.
And you basically have to have an Unreal plugin for your, an FMOD plugin for your Unreal project. Basically, that's what you need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to this event tab here, and I'm going to call it footsteps, because why not? Right? Call it footsteps like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a parameter to basically differentiate what's a concrete and a grass footstep, if that makes sense, that we can fire through into the game engine. So I'm going to create a new parameter, and the parameters can be like floats or integers, or we can have labels, that kind of stuff. So we're going to use a label this time, and we're basically going to have, instead of the label being value A, that can be concrete, and value B can be grass. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to click this and rename it. It should let me do it. There we go. Concrete. So this is just like a label for us, really. And this one can be grass. And I should be able to remove that value. So we've got 2 labels here, concrete and grass, for those footstep types. And concrete will be value 0 and grass will be value 1, basically. So in Unreal Engine, we're going to be messing around with these integers. So value 0, when Unreal fires that kind of value, then FMOD will play the concrete footsteps. And when Unreal deals with the value 1, then grass footsteps will play. That's basically how that works. So if I press OK on that, rename this again to, I'll rename this to footsteps as well, or footsteps param might be a good one to name that to there, right? So what we're going to do now then is we're going to, I think I'll clear this. I will create a parameter sheet, I think, for this, and we'll directly import our footsteps parameter in here like that. Then we can see we've got our concrete and we've got our grass there like that. And what we can then do is get our assets and get our concrete footsteps and drag them and put those straight in there like that. We should be able to drag this out a bit more and you should be able to see them there. Then we've got our grass footsteps and we can put those in there. And do you remember what you said earlier about the randomization?
Yeah.
Well, what we can do is we can click on this, what's called a multi-instrument, and we can shuffle it like a pack of cards, basically.
Okay.
And we can randomize these. Okay, so we're going to randomize these. So now I should be able to click on these, and we've got the random footsteps playing like that. And then grass are just coming through like that quite nicely. And you'll see up here, we can select each of these. This is the parameter here that Unreal is going to be messing with, if that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to save that. What we also need to do is we need to assign this event to a sound bank, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like you can have lots of different events and they all go to one bank, if that makes sense. So one bank could be level 1, one could be level 2, and you can have lots of different events for different levels, if that makes sense in the game. So at the minute you can see it's unassigned, so we're going to assign it to a bank, and we've just got a master bank that we're going to use there. I'm going to click save on that, and then we're going to go to the mixer tab, and what would be good, this will play as it is, in fairness. You should, if I can try and drag these windows together like this, we should be able to see that it does come through, but really we want a volume fader for these footsteps on the channel strip. That's what we want. So to create that, we just need to create a new group. So we've got a few different options here. We have a group, which is basically the channel strip we want. We have a return. So what a return does is you can put like an overall sound effect on lots of different groups, and you can bleed that signal onto that return, have a bit of an effect on there, and kind of have a what we call like a percentage ratio of like 60% return of reverb on a sound and then 40% of the dry signals.
What would you do with that then?
So with the return,
yeah, what would be a good like case scenario for that one?
So a good case scenario for this would be, this actually comes with a reverb. So a return is here already. And what you can do is you can, if you've got any sound in the game, if you bleed that sound on from a group onto a return, it means you can just add a touch of reverb, a touch of echo to that sound. Just makes sense. Yeah. And you can just bleed that onto the signal or not.
So it's like maybe how far you go into a cave as to how it echoes.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're not going to go all the way down that rabbit hole today.
But that's there.
But it's there. That's it. And the port option is for consoles like PlayStations and stuff like that. That's basically, that's built in there for those. So if I've thrown a new group, and again, I'm going to call it Footsteps, or Footsteps Mix. Let's call it that because it's the mix of both of them. And then you'll see, look, I've got that event, which is actually this guy here, right? I'm going to drag that guy and plonk him on there. So now we should, when I press play, we've got that extra volume control that we can rev up. Oh, there we go. Look, yeah, make things a bit louder if we want. Yeah, and that should transpire across to the other type of footsteps as well, which is concrete, like that. Okay,
as if they were getting closer, maybe.
100%, yeah. Absolutely. So it's all good stuff, right? So again, I'm going to save that. So now I've saved that stuff. If we just pop into Unreal for a sec, what I've got here is basically just the third person template in Unreal 5.6, and we're just going to use this. And what we're going to try and do is basically take this world and say that these bits here are concrete, and this green, is grass. We're going to try and do that. That's what we're going to try and do. So if we go back to here for a second, because Unreal is listening to FMOD, I'm going to save this project and I'm going to click build, right? And when I click build in FMOD, we get that little thing come up there, and I should be able to pop through into Unreal and we get a nice green tick. I love it when I get ticks. Yeah, it's when I don't get those, I panic, right? So if I go to FMOD here, which is the folder that's created when Unreal is listening to FMOD, I should now have an event, and we should have a footstep event there. And that thing there is that, okay? And we've got these footstep parameters. Remember, these are set to 0 and 1 in Unreal. So if I click this guy, we've got footstep parameter here. If I press play, you get that. If I push it all the way up to 1, get grass. Yeah. So do you see how that parameter data has been pushed through that event into a game engine, which is quite cool. So we've got that kind of communication. So basically, as a game audio, developer, you can start to do stuff in Unreal to, mess with this parameter. Should we give that a shot? Cool. Let's give it a go.
Sounds like a good idea.
Let's give it a go. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first go to the animation blueprint of our character and just show you this first. So animation blueprint, if people aren't aware of it, is basically where the animations are kind of triggered, if that makes sense, in Engine. So the different FBX sequences of like idle, walk, run, attack, they're all kind of basically controlled in here, like when to play them, if that makes sense. So we're going to use the animation blueprint to fire a line trace down, so an invisible line in the world, to differentiate what is concrete and what is grass. Okay, so we're going to use the animation blueprint. Okay, the other thing we're going to do as well is we're going to use what's called in Unreal a physical material. So the way in Unreal we do footsteps, the classic workflow is to use physical materials. So I'm going to create a new folder and just call it PM_materials, so physical materials. And we're going to assign different physical materials to these. So this will be a concrete and this will be grass, right? So to do that, the first thing we need to do is go to Edit, Project Settings, and we need to type in physical. And in Unreal, you can set lots of different surface types. You can have up to, I think it's 64. Oh no, 62. I was wrong. 62 different surface types. I've never needed 62. I never have.
Wow, it's like, I don't know, sci-fi game, metal.
Yeah, that's all you're ever going to need.
Maybe some outside, some soil or some grass. Oh, I don't know.
Absolutely. So you're never going to need 62. But we've got here, I'm going to type in concrete, and now I'm going to type in grass. So these are just label names. That's all they are. Yeah. So I type that in, and that's all we need to do there. What I then need to do is I'll go to my physical material folder, and I'm going to find my physical material. So if I right click and go to physics, I should get my physical material asset. And I want to basically say, yes, I want to create one of those. And I want to call it physical material _ concrete. And then I'm going to duplicate that guy out just because of time. Call this one grass. And all we're doing here, this is the asset we're creating now with that label we've just created in project settings. All we do is say that PM_concrete is surface type, is concrete, right? Which makes sense to me. And I bet you can guess what the surface type of grass will be.
Maybe grass.
It certainly is. Yes, you're doing well. Okay, so we're all good. So there we go. So we've set those like that. So that's good. We've got these physical materials in here now. Right. So now what we can do is we can actually go into some of these. I'll set a few of these up. Annoyingly, these are all kind of like individual meshes here, but I'm just going to
Slate, apply them all at the same time.
That's it, right? I'm just going to do a bit of that business. That's what I'm going to do. There we go. Stuff's happening. And then what I'm going to do is go to this bit here, physical material override. And then I'm going to say that's all concrete. And then I'm going to say these here, these platforms, they're all concrete. Let's just move this out a bit. Concrete. And this guy is also concrete. And we'll throw that as concrete. And this bit on the top, that bit's going to be grass. Okay, I'm going to save all this because I've done a lot of stuff. All right, so you're going to do that. Okay, that's that bit. So the next stage now then is we're going to move to the animation blueprint. So notice so far, we haven't even really done anything with the audio. As everything with game development, as we all know, it's a lot of setup, a lot of process.
Tick boxes, parameters.
Correct. So what I'm going to do then is go to the animation blueprint. And we're going to use what's called an animation notifier on an animation that plays. Now, when our character moves, we're using the jog forward animation in this version in Unreal. That's basically what's playing at the moment. Okay. So what we need to do is I'm going to just go to characters. I might do this first, actually. Go to anims, go to unarmed. So we haven't got a gun, and that basically means we're going to go to jog, and we're going to go to jog forward, right? And this is the animation that's playing basically when we're jogging forward, right? And we can put these notifiers on the animation to say do something at a certain time. So it's like keyframe. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do here is basically create a notifier. These are notifier tracks. I'm going to right click on here, add a new notifier, and I'm going to call it footsteps again. Yeah. I'm not very inventive with my keywords here, am I? So I'm going to get that, copy that, and I'm going to drag them along roughly.
I was going to say, you have to do that every footstep down.
Correct.
So is it coincidental?
Yeah. So you can see here, look, I'm getting to that footstep, and I'm going to copy that, click the playhead, and paste another one. There we go. So I'm going to get this fairly accurate. Again, if I was doing this with a bit more time, I'd probably take a bit more time doing this bit, but
zoom right in and make sure you're exactly there.
That's it. But for today, we're just gonna eyeball it, right?
Good enough.
Yeah, it's gonna be good enough. So let's throw these in if it will let me even copy this one. Cool. So what we'll do then is now we're gonna go to the animation blueprint, and we're gonna access these notifiers that we put in just called footstep. Okay. So if I go to the animation blueprint, we should now have an event called footstep. So if I right click and I go to add notifier event, we have this event called footsteps. And I'm just going to print this to the screen just to make sure this is all working. I'm sure it is. Let's have a look. Oh, and my laptop has just crashed. Oh, no.
It's just having a moment.
It is. There we go. So yeah, we've got the hellos there printing out on the screen. So that's great. Okay, so we're going to throw the rest of the code together now. So now we know that's working. What we're going to do, we've got a reference to our character already in our animation blueprint. There's character there, our object reference, and we're going to drag that guy in, and we're going to use something called a line trace by channel, and we're going to fire that line down from the character to the floor. That's what we're going to do. All right. So if I connect that up, get the character and get the location of our character first in wherever they are in the world when this fires. And that's going to be the start of our line trace. And then the end of the line trace is going to be kind of from the middle area, from the belly button area of the character down to the floor. So the Z-axis in Unreal is obviously up and down. So I'm just going to minus some Unreal units on the Z. So I'm going to do it by, let's say, 400. And we're just going to connect that into ends. and we're going to look at drawing a debug line persistently so we can just see if this is actually.
So with every step, you'll see
those little lines. That's it. So there's our little footsteps, which is all good, right? So now we're getting something where we've got some physical materials, we've got a line trace to the ground, so we can start doing some stuff with that. So if we go back to this, then we can break out, because we're hitting the ground, we can break out our hit result. You can get loads of information off this. The type of actor you're hitting, its actual location, the time you hit it, the distance, all of that kind of stuff. But today we just want to access those physical materials that we made, right? So our physical material, we can access that if we look for an enumerator called surface type. And if we switch on that enumerator, we get our concrete and grass label.
Right.
Yeah. So now we should be able to differentiate these. I'm going to print string to the screen again. And I'm going to call this one concrete and this one grass. And I don't know, we'll make them slightly different colors, right? So concrete, well, grass should be green, right? Concrete can be purple for today. Yeah. I was going to put grass a different color to green, but that doesn't seem right, does it? Let's go with that. So now we should have a setup where we've done our anim notifiers, we're line tracing down to the ground, and we've got grass, we've got concrete here, and we walk around on here, look, we get grass. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So all we've got to do now is hook that up with that FMOD event that we created. Okay. So we'll try and do this as fairly good practice. What you want to try and do when you're doing game audio is you don't want to create what we call a God class so much, so everything's in a God class, because things can break if you do that quite a lot. But you do want to create maybe a few what we call actor managers. Okay, so an actor manager is just something that you drag in the world that controls, it's like an epicenter, a smaller epicenter of the bigger system, if that makes sense.
I assume you'd want to separate out like an interior environment from an exterior environment and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you could do is you could have a manager for interior and exterior environments. You could do that kind of thing with sound, okay? So for today, I'm just going to create one kind of actor manager. And what this will do, this will just house the footstep audio component, if that makes sense. So we're going to create an actor. We'll call it BP_FMOD audio manager. We'll call it that. There we go, audio manager. And importantly, we need to drag this guy in the world. So we've got that one instance of that guy in the world. And in here, what we're just going to do is we're going to create in our components an FMOD audio component. Okay. And I'll just call this FMOD footsteps audio. Let's call it that. So we just know it's kind of footsteps. Now, what you might do in this scenario is the next audio component you might create. Let's say you're making music and you've got a music that can, like adaptive music in your game. Then you might want to create FMOD audio and call this one, music or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
You're going to go into a boss battle. Everything's changed.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And you can basically, you've got all of your different audio components. That one will deal with music. This one will deal with footsteps. You can maybe have another audio component that deals with some kind of NCP dialogue component for audio. Does that make sense? And you can categorize them quite nicely like this in a manager, which is quite cool. So we don't need that today. We're going to sack that guy off for a second. Okay. And what we're going to do as well is we're just going to create, allow to create an interface. So if we create a blueprint interface, BPI _FMOD audio, just call it that for today. Well, an interface basically means we kind of have to cast less, and it means that it's classless, so it can we can fire an event in an interface, and it can be across lots of different types of class of blueprint all at once, which is, of course, it's such an expandable kind of technique to use in the engine. So I like to try and use it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an event to fire in here. So I'm going to call this we'll call this event I for interface underscore, just call it footsteps again. Or I'll call it footstep type, like that. And we're going to put on here, we're going to send through an integer, right? And we'll call it footstep type. And we'll press compile and save. And that integer there is basically, we go back in FMOD, that integer is, if I edit this parameter, is this value here, 0 and 1. That's what it's referring to. Okay. So if I OK all that, which is all good, what we then need to do is, with this interface that we're going to use there, we need to tell Unreal we want to use this interface with this manager. So I'm going to click back in this manager, and I'm going to go to class settings. I'm going to go to implemented interfaces, and I'm going to type in my BPI underscore FMOD audio, and I say I want to use that interface, please, with this manager. Okay, this actor manager. And then I'm going to go back in here, the event graphs. This is like the coding area for visual scripting for Blueprint. In my FMOD audio manager, and I've got this little downward arrow here, look, and I can access that event I've just made in my interface. So I'm going to right click that, put implement event, and there we go. Look, we've got our footstep type and we've got our execution, if that makes sense. So I'm going to drag in our footstep, and what we need to do first is tell the FMOD parameter, the FMOD event, that, if I just bring it up again to show us, that we will access this parameter first. So is it going to be, is it concrete, or that's it, or is it going to be grass? So we're going to do that first. So we're going to say, okay, first of all, we're going to set parameter. So what we're going to do, so we can set that parameter there, and we can bring that through. In fact, I've just realized actually, it's probably going to be easier because I think just by default with FMOD, it defaults to floats.
I was going to say,
yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our interface and just change this to a float, just so we don't have to do any conversion. It's only a little change, but it's just a little bit more effective, I think, right?
I was just hoping it was going to work.
Yeah, well, that's it. I'm hoping it's going to work as well, hopefully. So we've got our little tag name here, and that tag name is going to relate to, if I click back on here, it's going to relate to this, footsteps param. That's the tag name. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm just going to, because it's all case sensitive, of course, I'm just going to make sure that I actually spell this correctly by copying and paste stuff, because normally I don't spell stuff correctly, and I spend 2 hours of my life wondering why it doesn't work. Exactly. That's it. So let's go back to manager, and let's put that in there. Like that. Brilliant. Okay, that should do the job. And then once we've told FMOD what type of footstep we want, we're just going to say, once we know what footstep we want, FMOD, just play it. Okay. So yeah, that's that. So for now, that's all the setup we need to do in our manager. Okay. We're going to go back now to the animation blueprint, because we need to call this interface event. That's what we need to do. Right. So we're going to go back to here, and we need to create a reference for this FMOD manager in the animation blueprint. So we can use a node. It only fires once, and we're going to use a node called getActorClass. And we're going to basically grab a reference to this FMOD manager that we've placed in the world, BP underscore FMOD audio manager. yeah, that's the one. And we're going to create that as a variable, BP underscore FMOD audio manager. Okay? Can't spell. There we go. Perfect. All right, that works. So we're going to do that when the game starts. We're going to initialize the animation blueprint. We're going to set that up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drag in that reference to our BP audio manager, and we're going to access this guy. Okay, so I underscore footstep type. And we're going to kind of send a message out, if that makes sense. That's what this interface does. So that interface, this guy is kind of like a phone call in a way. We kind of send the phone call out, and then this guy here is going to answer it here, if that makes sense. So if we go on here and we just search for that message, there we go. Footstep type message. We're going to send that message out. And when we're concrete, we need it to be, I think it's 0.
Yeah, the grass was the second.
Was it? I'm glad you were paying attention. So so I'm going to duplicate that guy for now and just say, make that guy 1. Cool. Okay.
A minute.
Yeah, there we go. Computer's come back to me. That's good. And we're going to save that. Okay. So things look like they should work. Let's see what happens. Right. So this should, it's not working. Okay. So I just need to see what I've done wrong there. Let's have a look. Okay. That's why. It's because I didn't put the event in the audio component. Okay. So basically, we've got obviously this event here, which is the footsteps. It's all working here. But in the audio component that I was on about earlier, you've got to actually put some audio in it. Okay. And I didn't. Okay. So there you go. Classic rookie mistake. So we put that in there. And now hopefully we should. There we go. There we go. So that's our grass. And this is our concrete, which is quite cool. And that is how you implement different footstep types in Engine going from to and from F, if that makes sense.
Okay,
cool.
So now what you need is an artist to make some concrete and some grass.
Exactly. And don't just use a sphere that, or it's just green, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that makes sense. I am not as talented as you like that. I'm really not.
I'll give it a go, maybe another day.
Fair play. Fair play. That sounds good. Right then, guys, that's basically then how we use middleware software like FMOD to create different footstep types and push them through into Unreal Engine and differentiate what's a different footstep from concrete to grass. So thank you for watching. Thank you for watching Developer Mode.